Bride kidnapping, a traditional practice rooted in Central Asia over a century ago, continues today, most notably in Kazakhstan. The practice of this tradition has in fact seen a marked increase in some regions since Kazakhstan gained independence from the Soviet Union and efforts were made to revive certain local customs. Bride kidnapping has its consensual and non-consensual forms, with both manifestations infringing on women's rights, emblematic of a region characterized by male dominance. In 2006, in her home in Kazakhstan, Lina Chermankaribkizi experienced an unexpected intrusion as a man abruptly entered her room and whisked her away. Initially startled, Lina's shock transformed into acceptance, realizing that her captor was actually her boyfriend, whom she'd known for 2 months. Outside her residence, a waiting car ultimately transported her to her boyfriend's home, where his relatives eagerly awaited the captive's arrival. Clad in a bridal veil, she was swiftly ushered into the house. Bride kidnapping in Kazakhstan is referred to as Elip Kashu, which translates as take the girl and run. Over a decade has passed since that day, and the young man who spirited her away is now her husband, with whom she shares 3 children. Lina's family resides beyond the capital city, adhering steadfastly to traditional Central Asian ways of life. The number of non-consensual kidnappings have, perhaps mercifully, dwindled due to their illegality, yet consensual bride abductions persist. The predicament lies in the fact that women frequently grant consent after the fact, sensing a lack of alternatives following their abduction by their partners. This is precisely the situation in which Lina found herself. Lina, an ethnic Mongolian, came to Kazakhstan to pursue her education. During her time there, she crossed paths with Erzenat Tareli, a local young man. Their mutual attraction led to a deep and genuine love. Sadly, though, Lina's family opposed their union, wishing to prevent her from settling permanently in Kazakhstan. In a desperate bid to ensure their partnership could flourish and gain her family's consent, Erzenat made the difficult decision to abduct Lina. On that fateful day, he wrestled with uncertainty, but his primary motivation was to prevent Lina returning to her homeland. It's important to note that aside from personal reasons, bride kidnapping in Kazakhstan is also driven by financial considerations. It offers men a means to circumvent the expenses associated with dowries and weddings, ensuring its longevity if for these 2 compelling reasons alone. The vast expanse and sparse population of this region have contributed to the existence of small, dispersed tribal communities. This geographical isolation has given rise to hostilities and competition between these tribes. Marrying a woman from a rival tribe is regarded as a symbol of triumph among the inhabitants of this area. The sole means of achieving this victory, however, was and still is by kidnapping or stealing the woman from their tribal adversary. Despite the chance of causing tribal conflicts in this manner, bride kidnapping remains deeply rooted in the local way of life. Both non-consensual and consensual bride kidnappings are employed to expedite marriages, secure approval, and evade dowry obligations. This cultural tradition is a very real manifestation of male dominance in this society, where men capture women rather than engaging in courtship and fostering marriages based on equality. While Lina didn't actively oppose her boyfriend's decision on that fateful day, her choice was far from being entirely her own. Very few women refuse the chance to start a family with boyfriends who've taken them, often seeing it as an opportunity too valuable to pass up. For Lina, her geographical separation from her home played a significant role in her acceptance of being kidnapped and starting a life with someone she had known for only 8 weeks. Lina revealed that at that moment, She harboured fears of catching her father and mother off guard, but given their considerable distance from her, she ultimately chose to embrace being kidnapped that day. Subsequently, she explained the circumstances to her family, emphasizing her genuine love for her boyfriend. Samiria, Lena's 64-year-old mother-in-law, adorned in traditional Kazakh attire, experienced the bride kidnapping tradition herself. Consequently, it came as no surprise that she consented to her son's decision to abduct Lena, even in the face of disapproval from Lena's own family. Samaria revealed that her son had consulted her, and she readily granted her consent to the bride kidnapping before the woman could return to her own family. Her conviction is based in the belief that the women in her family would comprehend and support the couple's choice, given the depth of their love. Samaria emphasized that her son had not resorted to any kind of force in the matter. Following Lena's abduction and her consent after the fact, her family had little option but to accept the path she had willingly taken. Today, more than a decade later, the couple's love remains as robust as ever, defying the odds of their brief acquaintance and decisions shaped by youthful emotions. Nevertheless, marriages stemming from bride kidnappings, characterized by the limited acquaintance and lack of mutual agreement, often end in divorce. Almaty, the former capital, is one of the few cities in Kazakhstan to have fully embraced Western culture. The architecture and clothing of its people differ noticeably from those in other cities. It is a country where modernity and old traditions coexist. Irrespective of whether it's dressed in modern or traditional ethnic clothing, male dominance remains deeply ingrained with no signs of diminishing. Furthermore, since Kazakhstan's separation from the Soviet Union in the 1990s, Kazakh society has shifted towards a more conservative stance, contrary to the prevailing global trend of liberalism. Beliefs, cultures, and traditional practices which had waned under communist rule have returned, driven by the aspiration of nation-building. Ancient beliefs have led to a prevalence of customs such as arranged marriages, polygamy, and even bride kidnapping. Practices which became deeply rooted in Central Asia well before the Soviet era, and which are now experiencing a resurgence. These traditional customs serve to perpetuate gender disparities. Raya Omarova, a 32-year-old Kazakh woman, is also a victim of bride kidnapping. Despite her contemporary clothing, she has encountered a culture which she perceives as outdated, much like Lena. Nevertheless, Raya's narrative took a different turn from Lena's. She chose to divorce her husband and is currently raising her child as a single parent. Following Kazakhstan's independence from the Soviet Union, women who previously held careers and enjoyed state welfare perks, such as free education in a communist economy that lasted for over 70 years, now grapple with the challenges to be found in the new competitive or capitalist system. As they transition from a communist society, they face a plethora of challenges on their journey towards newfound and expected freedoms. Many women find themselves unable to afford an education, losing employment opportunities, or ending up in low-income positions, with some even resorting to prostitution. Back then, Raya was employed as a waitress. She offered no resistance when she was abducted by a financially secure man with whom she'd only been acquainted for a month. For many women, marriage is perceived as a route to a better quality of life. For men, the tradition of bride kidnapping streamlines the marital process, bypassing the need to build relationships or engage in mutual considerations. Raya said that she was kidnapped in 2011 and went with him willingly. At that time, she faced financial difficulties and was looking for a man who could take care of her. Money was the main consideration behind her agreement on that day. She thought it would lead her to a better future. Financial security alone cannot, however, ensure a harmonious married life, and it was the influence of money in her decision that caused her mother-in-law to have a negative view of her, rendering her married life intolerable. Raya said that her former husband's family didn't like her, primarily because they didn't know her. They regarded her as just the woman their son had kidnapped. They began to argue with her and started pressuring her former husband to stop giving her money. Then she realized she had to leave. Aina Shormanbayeva, a women's rights activist in Kazakhstan, said that starting a marriage by kidnapping the bride often leads to early separation. This usually culminates in divorce, with women often shouldering the responsibility of raising their children alone. In Kazakhstan, there is a saying that characterizes a woman's journey as constricted and suffocating. Numerous women enter into marriages not of their own volition or with affection, and only a few summon the courage to break free from such unions. Divorcing a spouse doesn't merely result in social ostracism for women. It also ushers in economic hardships. Raya stated that her income is lower than her ex-husband's, and at present she's raising their child single-handed. Her former spouse was prepared to commit to providing financial support until their child reaches the age of 18, on the condition that she would gradually reimburse him when their child becomes financially independent. Raya, however, declined this offer. Besides the revival of age-old traditions, the enduring wage gap between men and women, combined with a lack of protective policies for women's rights in the post-Soviet era, pose significant challenges in the endeavour to end the practice of bride kidnapping.
If you want to see more great content from all over the world, please like the video, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. Thank you.
Following Kazakhstan's independence, it embarked on a path towards democracy, mirroring the transitions in other former Soviet Central Asian nations like Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. These countries all aspired to embrace democracy and integrate into the global free trade network. The journey towards democracy led, however, to a shift that marginalized women, and it appears that the pursuit of political freedom here does not include gender equality. Gender-based violence and oppressive gender customs have become increasingly visible, yet they are seldom prosecuted under the legal systems of these countries. In 2018, a 20-year-old medical student from Kyrgyzstan was abducted by a man who was infatuated with her and sought to force her into marriage. She resisted, taking a stand against this deeply entrenched cultural tradition. This resulted in the man brutally stabbing her to death. Gulnara Kochanalieva, the mother of the deceased, said that the entire family experienced an overwhelming sense of grief and loss. They were left in a state of despair due to the absence of a legal recourse for such situations. The government and the police chose to remain silent on the matter. As a direct result of her daughter's murder, she now firmly believes that it is high time for the bride kidnapping culture to end once and for all. The tragedy spurred more than 1,000 young Kyrgyz women into staging protests against bride kidnapping. They carried signs which read "End bride kidnapping" and "Give women the chance to be happy." Their rallying cry was for justice in all cases involving women. Gulbachin Suzanova, the leader of a protest group, explained that a united voice is emerging from the younger generation, who strongly oppose the practice of bride kidnapping. She emphasizes the importance of conveying the message that marriage should be a product of mutual consent between both parties involved. She calls upon the fathers and mothers of young men to discontinue their support for this cultural tradition. In Kazakhstan, while stranger-initiated bride kidnapping is infrequent, instances of abduction without prior notice or following only a brief acquaintance persist as infringements on women's rights, occasionally entailing unreported and unpunished acts of violence. While it's commonly believed that women can easily decline marriage proposals, the prevailing notion that each woman should be selected for marriage, with matrimony seen as the pinnacle of life, complicates this straightforward choice in Kazakhstan. Furthermore, in the post-Soviet era, instances of bride kidnapping and violence against women frequently go unchallenged by the legal system. In Central Asian nations, although women's representation in influential professions and roles that involve societal decision-making continues to lag behind that of men, women are often the most enthusiastic drivers of social change. Currently, teachers and students at Kazakhstan's Women's College are engaged in discussions about the practice of bride kidnapping within their culture. As new generations become more familiar with Western cultures, embracing contemporary fashion in their attire, style, and attitudes, the enduring custom of bride kidnapping in this region seems to remain entrenched as a tradition. This can, at times, obscure the hidden violence and infringements on women's rights associated with this practice, making it challenging for many young individuals to recognize these issues. Yet, within this cultural context, teachers and young people in this community are determined to instigate change. Sahifna Konizbrava, a university lecturer in Kazakhstan, pointed out that the practice of bride kidnapping, while historically tied to avoiding dowry payments, essentially permits men to abduct women without their consent, a notion she strongly opposes. Meanwhile, Duyazena Kirka, a university student, voiced her disapproval of this tradition and views it as incompatible with a more progressive world. She believes that in today's society, a fulfilling family can be built without the need for elaborate and therefore expensive weddings. Although some individuals, having gone through bride kidnapping themselves, might pass on this culture to their offspring as a familiar and age-old tradition, both Lina and Raya are staunch advocates for its elimination from Kazakhstan. This is particularly true when couples have only known each other for a brief time, as was the case for both Lina and Raya. Notably, Lina's situation did not culminate in divorce, but they remain committed to ending this practice nonetheless. Lina expressed her disapproval of this cultural anomaly, noting that it doesn't align with the significant changes in the modern world. She stated firmly that if she were to have a daughter, she would not want her to experience bride kidnapping. Furthermore, Raya believes that if the kidnapping takes place shortly after the individuals meet, it would pose a substantial challenge to establishing a strong and healthy family. Conversely, and perhaps predictably, Lina's husband sees it as a tradition that can continue to be upheld. This highlights the divergence in viewpoints between women and men on this matter. He remarked that in certain circumstances where financial constraints or familial restrictions prevent marriage, there might be no alternative but to resort to kidnapping. Bride kidnapping accurately reflects the gender roles within Kazakh society. It underscores the position of men, who often see themselves as the decision-makers and exercise authority in selecting a partner, like hunters following their prey. At the same time, it highlights the role of women, who frequently see their value in being chosen by a man and anticipate that men will take care of them for life. These perspectives do, of course, extend beyond the realm of bride kidnapping and can be found in various forms across the world.